All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Dave, me, and Nick here doing a 2022 preview and prediction for the Ohio State Buckeyes. Ryan Day, this is his fourth season as the lead man. He's been with Ohio State since 2017, 34-4 record overall. Kevin Wilson's listed as the OC. This is his sixth year with the program. Defensive coordinator Jim Knowles, the biggest addition of the offseason from a coordinator standpoint, comes over from Oklahoma State after having one of the nation's top units in 2021. Offseason headlines: 6 players drafted in April for Ohio State. They only had 3 adds in the transfer portal. Looking at the offense, it was the nation's best last year, I'd say, considering these numbers. Almost 46 points per game, 561 yards per contest. CJ Stroud, I picked him to win the Heisman Trophy last year, and he certainly shattered the expectations even I had. Very resilient, has a phenomenal deep ball, very confident. 4,400 yards, 44 touchdowns, only 6 picks. Ranks first and third in school history in single-game pass yards with the late Dwayne Haskins game sandwiched in between that. And that also came versus Oregon and Utah, so he was slicing and dicing against some of the top opponents in the country. How impressed were you with C.J. Stroud last season? He really stepped into some big shoes to fill and delivered.
There was a ton of hype around C.J. Stroud coming into the season last year. A lot of folks, including you, picked him to win the Heisman. He was a favorite on a lot of people's list. Then he starts out in the game against Minnesota, open the season, struggles a little bit in that first half, makes some costly mistakes, doesn't really seem comfortable. Then he really turns it on there and absolutely hits the gas and flies out of the gate and just plays fantastic in the finish off that Minnesota game. Then it has a really good game against Oregon, a record-breaking game against Oregon, and just really started getting comfortable in the offense. 44 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, incredible statistics, 72% completion percentage. One of the best quarterbacks in the country, maybe number 2 just behind Bryce Young, but you can even put them at 1 and 1A. CJ Stroud is such a talented player. This offense is fantastic. This offense is dynamite. We're going to touch on the wide receiving core that is absolutely stacked. Running back's not too bad either. So Stroud will be able to lead this offense. He's going to run the whole thing for them, and they should be a fantastic team in offense this year.
Like you said, he struggled a bit against Minnesota in that first half, and then turns around the next week against Oregon. Did have great numbers, but he did throw a costly interception on that final drive where they could have tied things up. Again, struggled a bit against Tulsa, didn't play the next week against Akron, and then he shows up and turns things on. Over the next 3 weeks, he had 14 passing touchdowns with no picks. Ended the year with a 72% completion rate. That resilience and confidence I talked about earlier. Now, against Utah, for example, it's 4th and short at, about the 20, 30-yard line. He looks to the left, sees one-on-one, he's going right to the end zone. Forget the first down. And what do you do? What do you know? They score a touchdown. It was like that against Michigan, too. And the Oregon game, 4th downs, 3rd and longs. And he delivers every single time. I was just so impressed with his resilience. Look at the supporting cast. The biggest reason I picked him to win the Heisman is because of the pass catchers he had and the backfield. Travion Henderson, I expected him to be the top impact true freshman in college football. I'd say he was. Good speed for being 215, 1,200 yards rushing, 15 scores. He had 4 more touchdowns as a pass catcher, 6.8 yards per carry, 6 games of 40-plus carries in 2020, only 2 this past season, and, one was in a blowout. So Ohio State, they've not been running the ball as much as we'd like to see. What can they do to get back to getting some balance? Because that was clearly an issue in, like, the Oregon game, for example, where the lack of commitment to the running game has really costed them.
I look at the stats. CJ Stroud attempted 441 passes last year. Travion Henderson only attempted 183 rushing attempts. That's just not enough for Ohio State. I like to see this balanced offense under them. Ryan Day sort of started that off in his career at Ohio State with a nice balanced offense, switching between passing and running. They didn't really do that last year. They kind of stuck to the passing game, which definitely works out when you have a talented quarterback and a great receiving core. But when you have a guy like Travion Henderson, who is faster for his size, like you said, at 215, I want to see him get involved more. 6.8 yards per carry is a great average for a running back in the Big Ten. 15 touchdowns on the ground as well. He can be a threat in the passing game as well. I'd like to see him be involved a little bit more, especially on the running side of the things. Yes, 1,250 yards last year is solid, but I'd like to see him step that up, maybe reach 1,500 yards, depending on how many carries he gets.
It's all going to be determined by the carries he gets. Like I said, Mayan Williams, though, another big back, over 7 yards per carry, 500-plus on the year. They have guys that can get the job done. They just have the, put a third of commitment to it. And obviously, it's really hard to do when you're just lighting opponents up through the air. I totally understand it. 180 yards per game rushing is a really good number. But when the defense has struggled as much as it has the last 2 seasons, you'd like to see them kind of dominate time of possession a little more, showcase more balance, which, they really don't have to. 46 points per game and the yards per game was a nation high. So obviously they don't have to be successful, but I think to have, better balance as a football team, I'd like to see them run the ball a little bit more. Only, 2 games this past season featured 40-plus carries, and one of them didn't matter. So Evan Pryor, he's also in the backfield. He has the elite track speed. Looking at the guys they'll be running behind, offensive line tackle duo reloads, kind of like the wide receiver duo does. Got Paris Johnson moving to tackle. He was a terrific run blocker. Wasn't as polished in pass protection, but he was still pretty good. He's going to match up with DeJuan Jones on the other side, who's an athletic freak. I love the two tackles they have here at Ohio State. How you feeling?
Paris Johnson's a fantastic tackle. I think the fit at left tackle is really perfect for him. I like them moving him out there. I think that's a solid fit. Then DeJuan Jones on the other side, I like what he can do. Senior leader, been around the program for some time now, has a great leadership role. These two tackles together will be great on this offensive line, and they'll be able to create some great holes for these running backs that really could use them.
Sarah Munford had the kick inside last year so Jones could play, and they put him at right tackle, and he was an elite run blocker, kind of like Johnson. They have some work to do in pass protection, but I think these guys will be phenomenal this year. I love this guy as a prospect, 6'8", 360. They showed his basketball highlights of him just dunking on people, so he's phenomenal in more ways than one. Looking at the interior, though, it's kind of a question mark. Luke Weipler, he's strong, he's athletic, was good in both aspects of his game last year. I expect him to continue to develop. And I think Matthew Jones and Donovan Jackson will be penciled in as the guards here. How do you feel about the interior? It's kind of been an iffy point of the offense at times.
Donovan Jackson is definitely an interesting pick for me. I just don't know if his experience level is quite there yet. I thought they might go with a different move, maybe Trey Leroy over there, or maybe slot someone else in there from a different side of the line. I get a little concerned about that. I think the center as well. I think Weipler, he has some solid reps at times, but I think he could use a little more practice as well, get some more experience. Definitely an experienced group for these three guys at left guard, center, and right guard. I definitely look to see if they can take a step forward. Matthew Jones is a redshirt senior. He has some experience to lead that sort of regard. But I just get a little concerned with this. I just don't know if their pass protection is going to quite be there this year.
And looking at the favorite part of the offense, the wide receiver group, I love this group so much last year. It's a shame the defense couldn't help them out more because I really wanted to see them in the postseason against a Georgia or an Alabama. I really thought this was probably the greatest receiving trio in college football history. Jackson Smith-Njigba, though, he is back, 95 receptions, 1,600-plus yards, both single-season school records, and then he also had 9 touchdowns. Oh, yeah, he had 2 15 reception games last year. Those are both school records as well. It's 347 versus Utah. Guess what? School record. This guy is just phenomenal. Great route runner. He can make you pay after the catch. His resilience is impressive, too. He had a catch against Michigan. It was 3rd and long, and there's a defender draped over him, and he pinned the ball on the defender's back, I believe. It's just this guy can do a little bit of everything. Put him in the slot, put him out wide. It doesn't matter. This guy just has a phenomenal first step and just a great knack for finding the football.
I love Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think he's so talented. Had a day at the Rose Bowl, historic day performance for Ohio State. Really helped that offense get out of a bind against Utah. I love what he can do. 1,600 yards receiving, fantastic on 95 receptions. That 16.9 average is incredible average for this wide receiver. 9 touchdowns as well to boot. Not too bad at all. He definitely was a strong player. Ohio State fans are very glad to have him returning, considering the talent they lost to the draft, the wide receiving position. But they just lock and load in Columbus. They recruit so well for the wide receivers. The guys coming in even after these guys are fantastic. Bunch of 5-stars out of high school. The wide receiving core at Ohio State is one of the best in the nation. They're going to continue to lock and load, and Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to lead them this year.
They lost Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave to the first round of the draft. These guys combined for nearly 2,000 yards, and they had 25 touchdowns last year, so some big shoes to fill. Emeka Egbuka, one of those guys you're looking to step up. He might fill that role that Wilson departs. He has great body control. He can separate, adjusts well, yards after catch. You kind of see some of those similar traits that Garrett Wilson had. Julian Fleming, physical and more speed after the catch. 19 catches in 2 years. They're both 205 pounds. Fleming, he hasn't played much, but this is going to be a year for him to step up. They were both top-ranked wide receiver recruits, high-end 5-stars. Also got Marvin Harrison Jr., 6 receptions, 71 yards, and 3 scores in the Rose Bowl. That was his first opportunity to shine, and guess what he did? He's pretty elusive, quick feet in the short area. I like what he brings to the table. You also got guys like Caleb Burton from Lake Travis. He's one of the more high-end recruits they got in this recent class. They got 3 top 135 recruits at receiver, and he was one of them. They also, a couple days ago, just landed some more 4- and 5-star receivers recruits. So everyone wants to play with Ryan Day in this offense, and I don't blame him one bit.
Yeah, there's a ton of talent coming in from recruiting as well. People want to be here. They know they're gonna start at this school if they play wide receiver. That the ball is gonna get to them. CJ Stroud's gonna be able to sling the ball to them. I like what they have here. Marvin Harrison Jr. is the player that I'm most interested in. Like you said, had a great day at the Rose Bowl last year. I think he can step up here and be a very strong wide receiver. I think he'll be the number 2 guy behind Smith-Njigba if he can get his act together and be ready to go. I liked his 12.6 yards per catch on his limited action in 5 games last year.
And Cade Stover, he's going to take over at tight end, replacing Jeremy Ruckert, who was one of the more underrated pass catchers for the Buckeyes. He was a big-time tight end, 6'5", 250. He did a lot of work down the seam and in the red zone. So that's going to be an underrated departure to pay attention to. Not worried one bit. This offense will be, once again, the nation's best. That leads us to the defense, though. Jim Knowles, he comes over. He's going to implement that 4-2-5. I thought they had the best defense in college football last year. They led the nation in sacks per game. He's got a big issue to fix, though. Ohio State, they were very soft last year. Gave up 269 on the ground week 2. Allowed under 100 rushing yards in 7 of the next 9 games. You thought things had changed a bit. Of course, they'd played a weaker schedule. But still, throughout the entire year, we thought they improved. They played Michigan, and that was not true. 4 straight 60-yard drives in the second half allowed. They gave up over 7 yards per carry, 300 yards on the ground. They also got gashed by Utah the next week. Their offense was able to outscore them that day in Pasadena. But something's got to change because the run defense is just horrid.
I am interested to see how Knowles 4-2-5 works. I like the 4-2-5, one of my favorite formations in defense in college football. I think this is a solid formation. I think Knowles will be able to coach him up. I like what he can do here. Solid pickup for them at defensive coordinator. Like you said, they just weren't tough enough. They were giving up too much on the ground, especially against Michigan. Michigan literally ran all over them en route to winning that rivalry game for the first time in a very long time. I'd like to see some step-ups definitely on the line this year. I think some of these guys will need to make some moves to step up.
The effort against the run does need to be better. The production from the outside edge rushers does. You know, the defensive tackles led them in sacks last year. Pascal Garrett had 5, and Tyleik Williams was right behind him as well. Williams is back. Garrett is gone. Looking at some of the edge rushing potential they have, though, freshman Jack Sawyer, who's 3rd on the team in sacks with limited performance. So clearly something was missing for the interior guys that lead them in sacks, and the guy right behind them barely played. Zach Harrison's been very disappointing. Tyleik Williams, though, happy with his size on the interior, slim down, athletic guy, one of the top defensive tackles in college football, in my opinion. Jaron Cage, Teron Vincent, these guys are all 300-plus pounds. They're not overwhelming or anything, but there's clearly talent on the interior. There's plenty of talent on the edge rushing group, too. JT Tuamalua, he is a 5-star recruit coming over here. Him and Sawyer, they're going to get let go here. Alicia's going to be off their second year on campus. Someone's got to step up. Who are you kind of eyeing on this defensive line to make a big-time impact this fall?
I think for me, it's going to be Tyleik Williams. I like what he can do. 6.5 tackles for loss and 5 sacks last year. I like to see him step a little bit. He played in 9 games. Didn't do a whole lot outside of those numbers for the tackles for loss and the sacks, but I like to see what he can do. I think he has potential to step up. He's going to have to be a bit of a leader and make some moves here. He has some experience now. Yes, he's a bit of a younger guy, but he had a decent freshman year as a redshirt freshman. I like to see what he can do as a talent. I think he's a good fit at defensive tackle. I think he'll be able to make some big moves this year.
And last year, like I said earlier, Oklahoma State, they had the top-ranked pass rush last year from a statistical standpoint. They had plenty of guys get involved off the edge. So that's something, obviously, Jim Knowles is going to try and implement is a better pass rush because last year it worked so good for them. And when you have a pass rush like that, you have 5 guys in the secondary. You already kind of have an edge against these vertical passing attacks. That's just a perfect formula to have a strong defense. Look in the middle of the unit, though, linebacker, it's a big concern. They have 2 guys who are former running back, Steel Chambers, and now Chip Trainum comes over from ASU. That's not good, especially when Tommy Eichenberg, he was solid last year, 64 tackles, which was 2nd on the team, but he still wasn't great in run support, took bad angles. The defense as a whole, up front was not good. When the D-line got pushed around, it was hard for him to make plays. I'm eyeing CJ Hicks, though. He's an incoming 5-star. I think they got no choice but to get him involved here because I don't really have much confidence in anyone else here that's going to get playing time.
CJ Hicks will have to start and play early. He's a very talented recruit at a high school, 5-star recruit, one of the better linebacking recruits in his class. He's going to have to start early because the depth is there. It's not really there. Tommy Eichenberg has to step up. He wasn't great in the tackles, like you said. Did finish 2nd in tackles, but he definitely missed some opportunities he could have. Steel Chambers as well. I'm just not totally convinced on him. I like Hicks to step up and be an impact player as a freshman, but it's going to rely on him, which is a lot to say for a freshman. That's definitely not where you want to be when you're a team like Ohio State.
They also get Toyi from USC. He's a former 5-star. Hasn't really did much in his career. Was kind of quiet last year. Trying to figure out where he's going to transfer to. He's kind of buried on the depth chart, but that's a name to try and remember because he might get involved here this season. I thought personnel in the secondary wouldn't be as bad last year compared to 2021 because they didn't recruit anyone that year. They just added 3 guys in last year's class. I thought they'd make a bigger impact, but they really weren't. Ryan Watts, he's gone. Lathan Ransom, who's coming off a leg injury. They landed 6 DBs last year, though, so 2 top 5 corners. So maybe they'll start to provide an asset. Jordan Hancock and Jaqueline Johnson, they're 2 of them. They're going to be – I'm not sure if they're going to get playing time early on. I think that some of these younger guys are going to have to start getting involved, though. Ronnie Hickman, he was an enforcer, makes plays all over the field. He's a hybrid, though. Doesn't do much for them in coverage. So they're going to have to find some playmakers here. Denzel Burke, he stepped up. He was great. 12 pass breakups a season ago. And then Tanner McAllister, one of the more underrated transfer additions. He's following Knowles from Oklahoma State. That's going to help teach some of these younger guys this defensive philosophy. How do you feel about a secondary that's really been not good the past 2 seasons?
I like McAllister coming over, like you said, will help out the secondary, coach these guys up. He's worked with his head coach, with his defensive coordinator at Oklahoma State. I like Ronnie Hickman as a tackler, 99 total tackles, 1 tackle for loss, and a sack, 2 interceptions as well for him. But like you said, just the coverage isn't really there for me with Hickman. I'd like to see him step up a little bit, maybe get more involved with that. I think this is a decent secondary. I think they will definitely have room to improve this year, and they can make some step up as well. McAllister will help a lot with that, but they're just not great and didn't perform great last year, nearly 3,200 yards. It's just not good enough for a team like Ohio State that really should be expecting more out of their defense.
Sevyn Banks, we expected big things out of him. He didn't really perform well, and now he's gone, I believe, off to LSU. Marcus Hooker, another player that we were kind of searching to see what would happen. Josh Proctor, he only had 2 games last season. That was a big loss when he got hurt, 10 tackles last fall. So having him back in the lineup, that's certainly help with Cam Brown as well, who he got some significant playing time last year. So secondary, kind of iffy on it, but we'll see what happens. I think that they got some potential. And all 3 levels of this defense, Jim Knowles, though, he's got a lot of work to do. I have faith in him. This should be fun to watch this turnaround for the Buckeyes defense. I think that they will certainly be better than last year, but how much better remains to be seen. What are your expectations this season for the defense?
Jim Knowles was a fantastic hire. I think he has the serious potential to turn this defense around. They really disappointed across the board last year. I expect a step up from them this year, but I just don't know if he'll reach the levels that some fans expect in Columbus. They're expecting elite defense. I think he'll just fall just short of that.
Noah Ruggles was also back. He only missed 1 kick. That was second in CFB at field goal percentage. He also led the FBS in PATs. He hit all 74, so that's a nice little add there. Looking at the schedule and the prediction for Ohio State, clean sweep of green for me. I have them going 12-0, but I do think there's some hiccups potentially on this schedule. You start with Notre Dame at home, 15-point favorites right now. But I think if the defense was as soft as it was last year, Notre Dame with that offensive line and running game, they're going to tear them apart. So that's something to look out for. I don't think Notre Dame matches up well in the secondary, so I think that Ohio State will certainly have an edge there. Wisconsin, September 24th, the same issue. Ches Malusi and Braylon Allen will tear you guys apart for 60 minutes if your defense is soft like it was last year. So I think those are 2 games to watch. Michigan State hosting the Buckeyes this year, looking to get revenge after getting absolutely abominated in the first half. They gave up, almost 50 points or something like that. They were just getting torn apart. At Penn State, that can always be tricky. And then, at Maryland, maybe that strong passing attack has something for them. But I don't see any losses here, but those games are some of the games I'm watching. Michigan as well, I picked them to win 10 games, so that will be tricky also. You have the Buckeyes go to 12-0 because I have them in the playoffs.
Ohio State 12-0 in the playoff, Big Ten champions for me as well. I do look, though, I think the toughest game for me is actually maybe a bit of a wild card. Some people might not agree with me. I think at Penn State, October 29th, is their toughest game of the year. I expect that to be a whiteout game in Happy Valley. That's always a tough atmosphere when they get that crowd going. Very intimidating to play there. If they get caught off guard early on, fall behind a little bit, they could find themselves in trouble. Penn State has played them close in recent years, especially in Happy Valley. So I think there's some potential there for an upset maybe. If I had to pick one game that I think they could potentially lose, I'd say that was Penn State. Notre Dame, scheduling them, I think I like the scheduling from them. Nice kickoff game for them in Columbus. I think that's a solid pick. But when you look at the schedule top to bottom, they start the season out with five home games in a row. Then they travel Michigan State, but then they also play Iowa at home. They get Michigan at home. They get Indiana at home. Very favorable schedule in terms of the road and away splits for me. This should be an easy 12-0 for Ohio State, but potentially a slip up on October 29th.
Yeah, like you said, very good draw for the home games and the road games, even though Penn State will be tough. Should be a fun season from Ohio State. This offense, they're going to be a blast to watch week in, week out. The defense, though, that's where everyone's eye is going to be to see what Jim Knowles can do in this first season. I do think improvement is imminent. 12-0 playoffs for me, and it should be fun to see what happens come the end of December. That's going to be it for today's episode, guys. Nick, as always, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.